For the past 10 years, the Faith and Freedom Coalition's Road to Majority Conference has empowered conservative activists to fight for their values at the election polls and in the public arena. Now, for the first time, the annual meeting kicks off Wednesday, not in Washington, D.C., but in Atlanta, Georgia, because of COVID-19 restrictions in the nation's capital. One America's John Hines spoke to Timothy Head, the director of the Faith and Freedom's Road to Majority Conference, and has this report.
There have been some changes due to COVID-19. What's happening?
So normally the Faith and Freedom Coalition has our annual event in Washington, D.C., and it normally happens in late June, but because of not only health restrictions themselves, but also the responses from local governments in Washington, D.C., we had to be a little bit creative this year. We normally, if you will, kind of bring the crowds to D.C. In some ways, we're actually going to kind of bring D.C. to the crowds here. We're expecting a really lively crowd. One of the reasons why this was appealing is because the local officials there in Cobb County and also in the state of Georgia, Governor Brian Kemp, have actually been, I think, very judicious in their approach to COVID, and it's actually possible to have a pretty good sized gathering, and I think that we'll be able to do just that in Atlanta on September the 30th, October 1st, and October the 2nd.
What sort of direction are you going in terms of topics, in terms of themes, in terms of speakers that you can talk to us about?
This is about as good a list of speakers as you're going to find in North America in the year 2020. So I think that we'll have certainly federal elected officials from the White House, from the U.S. Senate and U.S. House. We'll also have governors, certainly Governor Kemp we're expecting to join us, but also governors from neighboring states. And then also recognizable figures that may not be elected officials, but themselves are newsmakers, if you will. Obviously, the Faith and Freedom Coalition, we're interested in issues that pertain to faith in America, but sometimes not in completely predictable ways. And so we'll have pastors and priests and rabbis and bishops that'll certainly talk to us about issues about life and about marriage and about religious liberty, etc. But we'll also we'll have law enforcement officers that'll be there talking about tremendous gains that have been happening in the realm of human trafficking, for instance. There's not a lot of talk about that in public media.
I am assuming that the president has been invited. Has he been invited, and what's his status?
Indeed, President Trump certainly has been invited, and we're awaiting the final confirmation. I will say that he's come 6 of the last 7 years. A lot of people may not know that he actually was coming to Road to Majority before he was even a candidate for office, for president.
And that was how many years ago?
See, he's now come. The first time he came was 7 years ago.
The conference typically occurs in the spring. Now it occurs in the fall. This is an election year, October, just about a month before the election. So it seems like it may be a very well attended, maybe that the timing is very good. What do you think the evangelical voter turnout will look like in the 2020 election?
Well, in a word, I would say animated, to say the least. There is an enormous amount of energy right now. Frankly, I would actually say we are at a higher pitch in September of 2020 than we were in September of 2016 going into the 2016 presidential election. So I would say a couple of reasons for that. Some of it is frankly, there was a lot of there was still some consternation a little bit among evangelical voters and faith voters in 2016, not exactly sure what they were going to get in a Donald Trump as a would-be president. And now that we're 4 years into his first term, I think that, as he likes to say, promises made, promises kept. I think that a lot of faith-based voters have heard that message loud and clear, that arguably he's the most pro-life president that the United States has ever seen.
Timothy Head, Executive Director of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Thank you for talking to One America News. It's good to catch up with you.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.